Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our launch of the Environmental Defense Fund's report on the Illinois warehouse boom. My name is Danny Robles, that is spelled out DANY ROBLES, and I am the Climate Policy Director with the Illinois Environmental Council, and I will be your MC today. For the past several months, the Environmental Defense Fund's team has been gathering data on the growth of mega warehouses across American communities, driven in part by the e-commerce boom. This growth has a pronounced impact here in Illinois. Our state has long been the center point from the early days of indigenous trade routes driven by the region's proximity to lakes and rivers, to early colonial settlers taking these same routes for their own benefit. And with the rise of industrial revolution, we saw the focus of American connectivity in Illinois as rail lines ran through the Chicagoland area. In the 20th century, we have seen the same trend continue to grow of e-commerce and the need for massive facilities to house, distribute, and deliver goods in a matter of days for people living across the Midwest. Today, you will hear from policy experts from the Environmental Defense Fund, Warehouse Workers for Justice, the Little Village Environmental Justice Organization, and Neighbors for Environmental Justice, who have been leading the advocacy for clean air for all here in Illinois. They represent the lived experiences of thousands of Black and Brown community members who are impacted by diesel pollution driven by the expansion of truck traffic. Additionally, we have state legislators who are chief sponsors of the Warehouse Pollution Insights Bill, give the IEPA the ability to track the number of warehouses over 100 square feet in Illinois and help plan out where air monitors should be distributed here in Illinois. We will hold time at the end for anyone who has questions for our speakers. And up first, we have Sam Becker, Project Manager, Global Clean Air with the Environmental Defense Fund, to talk a little bit more about the report.
Thanks so much, Danny. Hey, all. My name is Sam Becker. I'm a project manager on Environmental Defense Fund's Global Clean Air team. I will share my screen and share that is based on our new report, Illinois Warehouse Boom, that is out today. The report examined the proximity of truck-attracting facilities, leased mega warehouses equal to or greater than 100,000 square feet to communities across the state. It also assesses the state of pollution monitors that are supposed to monitor harmful pollutants from the hundreds of thousands of trucks that come to and from these facilities on a daily basis. By trucks, I'm going to be talking about basically every truck that's larger than a pickup truck. Imagine delivery vans, box trucks, and semi-trucks. At least 1 in 6 Illinois residents lives near a leased warehouse. Identified 401 leased megawatts equal to or greater than 100,000 square feet. And as can be seen from the right, Warehouse City is high Chicago metro region. These warehouses compose 632 million square feet. The square footage of these warehouses has grown 33% of the last decade and 72% of the last 2 decades. These warehouses generate 525,000 truck trips on a daily basis. Why does this report just focus on leased mega warehouses? The answer is that the state of Illinois does not have a full list of all warehouses, meaning that researchers must turn to expensive private databases that only contain leased warehouses. This means that all the stats you're seeing here are likely underestimates. Now, I'll talk about how warehouses burden decades of racist and discriminatory planning are new and warehouses, roads that serve them disproportionately located in communities of color and about warehouses for some time. Each analysis found that the statewide statistics, Hispanic Latino population nearly 200% more likely to live within half a mile of a leased mega warehouse than expected. Black, Indigenous, Asian, and low-income populations are also represented, and you can find those statistics in the report. Not only are warehouses disproportionately located in these communities, it's also important to recognize that Hispanic, Latino, and Black workers account for 85% of temporary workers in factory communities. Workers are being exposed to harm at the work at home. Now I'll talk the impact from main pollutants that's emitted nitrogen dioxide or NO2. So trucks, many of which are warehouses across the state, make up 67% of nitrogen oxide pollution, which is the precursor to nitrogen dioxide pollution, NO2. A growing body of peer-reviewed research indicates that exposure to NO2 both exacerbates and causes asthma and results in death, and that the harms from NO2 are unevenly concentrated in communities of color. The graph on the left shows that white people live in areas with the lowest vehicle-related NO2 burden at a rate double that of people of color, while people in areas with the highest vehicle-related NO2 burden at a rate double that of white residents. In the Chicago alone, and from responsible for over 1,300 deaths and 1,500 childhood asthma cases every year. NO2 is contributing to more than 7,200 new childhood asthma cases a year across the state. And the map on the right shows that kids across the state are being impacted. The impacts, however, are unequally distributed and the result of decades of environmental racism. For example, Black children are nearly 6 times more likely to be hospitalized from asthma and 10 times more likely to die from asthma compared to non-Hispanic white children. I don't have time to dive into the unequal burden caused by another main vehicle generated pollutant, fine particulate matter, or PM 2.5, but I do want you to know that the deaths and diseases that this pollutant causes cost the state more than $4.3 billion a year. There's more information about PM 2.5 impacts in the report. Now I'll dive into the inadequate air pollution monitoring network across the state. Cascades, leased mega warehouse square footage has increased 72%. During this same period, however, EPA grade NO2 and PM 2.5 monitors that the state and federal government use to measure pollution and make regulatory decisions did not increase. Due to these trends, the ratio of EPA grade PM 2.5 monitors and NO2 monitors per warehouse is down 62% and 69% respectively compared to 2003. Today, we're seeing large clusters of leased mega warehouses that have no NO2 or PM 2.5 monitor within miles, meaning communities, advocates, and lawmakers don't have the data we need to identify where elevated levels of pollution exist. Now, in the next few slides that follow, I'll share that show the project may go to residents. Maps are located in the report. In central Illinois, we identified 85 leased mega warehouses composing 21 million square feet and around 18,000 truck trips per day. There's 60,000 people living within a half a mile of these warehouses. It's important to recognize that NO2 generally forward annual asthma cases in the region. There are no EPA grade NO2 or PM 2.5 monitors. Black residents are nearly 200% more likely to live within a half a mile of a leased mega warehouse than expected based on regional demographics. Low-income and Hispanic Latino residents are also overrepresented. In Will County, which covers much of the recent region represented by Representative Avalar, who will be joining us in the webinar today, we identified 370 leased mega warehouses composing 149 million square feet of warehouse space and generating 137,000 daily truck trips. There are 97,000 warehouse neighbors, There are 200 annual childhood asthma cases from NO2. There are 2 EPA grade PM 2.5 monitors, none of which are located in the areas that have the most leased mega warehouses. There are 0 EPA grade NO2 monitors. Hispanic Latino residents are over 150% more likely to live within a half a mile of a leased mega warehouse than expected based on the county's demographics. Black and low-income residents are also overrepresented. The disproportionate burden that the warehouse population is present within the district level 2. You can look at table 2 and 3 in the report to understand the statistics and the disproportionate rate at which leased mega warehouses are located in communities at the district. You'll also notice here that Senator Ventura and Representative Avalar each have the highest number of leased mega warehouses and have the highest number of leased mega warehouses based on the Senate and the House, and we're looking forward to hearing from them soon. Now I'll pass it over to my colleague, Nida Delami, who's a manager on EDF's vehicle electrification team to discuss policy solutions.
Thanks, Sam. At EDF, that zero-emission vehicles are crucial to reduce pollution, and working with advocates on this call to try to address the impacts of it. So the Warehouse Pollution Insights Act, which is Senate Bill 838, would establish transparency around warehouses and truck attracting facilities that Sam talked about by requiring them to register and annually report information to the Illinois EPA. The bill would expand IEPA air monitoring efforts, including truck counts, and increase the resources and capacity of community groups already doing this work. It would prepare new facilities for zero-emission vehicle technology and prioritize investments that are already happening in beneficial electrification in the overburdened areas. Once we've laid the advocate for indirect source review, which would advise reduction at warehouses through a points-based client system. You can read more about that in our of the report. There's also complementary policies to consider, like the Clean Trucks Rule, which would increase the supply of zero-emission vehicles, and the heavy-duty no nitrogen oxide NOx rule, which sets emission limits on new diesel engines. Together, these policies create market certainty for zero-emission truck deployment and inform utility planning for building charging.
Thank you so much, Sam and Netta. Up next, we have Illinois State Representative Dagmar Avalar, who represents the 85th District. Representative Avalar is a chief sponsor of the Health and Equity Insights Act, a bill that combined with this warehouse bill would help build out air monitors across Illinois communities near warehouses. Representative Avalar.
Thank you, Danny, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we address a critical issue that affects each and every one of us, air pollution. Air pollution is not merely an inconvenience. It poses significant risk to human health. And the statistics are alarming. We just saw them right now. Studies have shown that exposure to air pollution increases the likelihood of strokes, pulmonary disease, and various cancers. It also exacerbates asthma, damages lungs, and leads to lower respiratory infections. The toll it takes in human lives cannot be understated. That's why today I appreciate that we are gathered here today to talk about this. But let's make this clear. This is not just our health that's at stake. Air pollution wreaks havoc on the environment around us as well. It harms crops and trees, impeding their growth and making them also susceptible to disease. It creates smog and it thickens the air, making it difficult to breathe and contributing to the ozone depletion. Often, we also point fingers at external sources for air pollution, and rightly so. Industrial emissions and transportation are major contributors. Factories and warehouses spew out toxins while trucks emit carbon monoxide and other pollutants into the air we breathe. As a lawmaker deeply committed to healthcare, as somebody who was a former warehouse worker, I am passionate about tackling the issue of air pollution That is why I introduced House Bill 5013. This bill is a comprehensive step towards addressing air pollution in Illinois. It amends the Illinois Environmental Protection Act, and it establishes the Health and Equity Advisory Council, which will be tasked with studying and recommending measures for environmental justice, particularly focusing on factories, warehouses, and trucks. So I am here to answer any questions that any of the public may have. But again, I just cannot stress this enough. This legislation is not just about regulations, it is about investing in our future. And we need to make sure that we are addressing the consequences of environmental pollution and that we are reaffirming our commitment to healthy, safe environments for generations to come.
Thank you so much, Representative. Up next, we have Shania Polosova, who's a policy coordinator with the Warehouse Workers for Justice, here to discuss the lived experiences of people working in these facilities. Shania?
Good morning. My name is Zhenya Polozova, and I'm a policy coordinator at Warehouse Workers for Justice, or WWJ, and we're a workers center that's fighting for good living wage jobs in Illinois' logistics industry. We're based in Joliet, Will County, located in Northeast Illinois, right outside the Chicago metropolitan area. What's taking place in Will County underscores the necessity for the passage and swift implementation of the Warehouse Pollution Insights Act. Will County is a major logistics hub where 6,400 acres of port and warehousing make up the largest inland port in North America, which is 8 times the size of the nearby Midway Airport. It's where 7 major highways and 6 major railroads intersect, making Joliet a day's haul from 60% of the country. Hundreds of warehouses operate in the supply chain of at least half of all Fortune 500 companies here, drawing tens of thousands of trucks to the area on a daily basis. Each year, over 4% of the nation's GDP moves through warehouses and distribution centers in Joliet. Despite this, warehouses continue to proliferate in Will County. A proposed project called North Point, currently held up in courts, would add 3,800 acres of industrial warehousing to the county. Nearly everything that we use on a day-to-day basis has once passed through the hands of a warehouse worker. But despite their critical importance in the global economy, warehouse workers are some of the most exploited in the workforce. The majority of warehouse workers are low-wage, Black, Latino, or immigrant workers that get stuck in cycles of temporary work, lack benefits like healthcare or paid time off, have vastly unpredictable schedules, and face soaring rates of safety violations, injuries, discrimination, harassment, intimidation, and wage theft. On top of that, warehouse workers are a frontline community, which are communities that experience the most immediate effects of pollution, in this case generated by the logistics industry. Warehouse work in constant proximity to idling trucks, and their physical exertion on the job results in them breathing even more of the toxic air surrounding them. Moreover, warehouse workers are statistically more likely to reside in neighborhoods that are also disproportionately impacted by diesel pollution and other environmental harms. And so many of them cannot escape toxic air, either at work or at home. This bill would grant us critical data on the expansion of warehouses, the trucks that follow, and the characteristics of their health and demographic impacts throughout the state. It would empower workers and residents with information about the effects of pollution they are experiencing, effects that cannot be perceived with the naked eye. Furthermore, this legislation would give workers, communities, and lawmakers a tool to combat exposure to toxic pollution, particularly given the reality that we already have the technology to cut harmful emissions and protect our public health. Warehouse Workers for Justice urges the Illinois General Assembly to stand with warehouse workers and all frontline communities in Illinois to pass the Warehouse Pollution Insights Act and continue to fight for the ability for all to breathe clean air in the state of Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shania. Up next, we have Illinois State Senator Rachel Ventura from the 43rd District, whose district is one of the most impacted by warehouses in all of Illinois. And she will also be one of our co-sponsors for the Warehouse Pollution Insights Act. Senator?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have my camera on. I am stuck on Route 80 surrounded by trucks. So talk about perfect timing for that. Yeah, I mean, you guys have talked about some of the statistics. The 43rd District is home of the largest inland port in North America. We see 3.65% of our GDP yearly go through our county, a champion for things including clean air, zero emissions vehicles, so a cargo fee on our trucks in and out of this area. There is so much that impacts us, everything from not being able to move around our county very well, but I think the representative really touched on the health concerns. We've got trucks who are going by our schools on a regular basis, spewing out those toxins. Will County has seen over the years a 6% in asthma cases. This is obviously directly tied to the growth of the industry here. Furthermore, yesterday, I met the Troy administration and some of the surrounding partners, like the city of Panuca, only to find out that the CNA and Railroad is bringing a 900-acre intermodal to our area that will be bringing 3 million trucks a year to our region. So while North Point might be tied up in the courts, the railroads have the federal jurisdiction that can pretty much supersede a lot of what happens locally. So this problem is going to continue to grow. There are so many things going on in our district that creates problems, and you've touched on them a little bit: the low wages, the predatory business of some of these logistic companies, or the temp workers. But the health impacts are things that we can address by at least tracking information and then putting in mitigations or trying to move our trucks over to zero emissions. We know at the climate crisis, it's here today. It's only going to be continuing to get worse. And we need to address these things head on. Moving our infrastructure over to zero emissions or hydrogen trucks, it's a must. We can't wait any longer. These things need to happen. And I know that other states have been aggressive in this. We need to be aggressive too. This bill, though, allows us the data we need to really push those aggressive policies to show why we need this and where our communities are suffering and where our tax dollars have to go to help with the healthcare costs, the environmental mitigations. We really cannot delay any longer in this. As online sales continue to grow and increase year after year, we need to get a better handle on what logistics looks like for our entire planet. So I encourage support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. With us as well, we also have Illinois State Senator Javier Cervantes, who is a senator from the 1st District and represents many of the Latino communities in the Chicago Southwest side. Senator, wondering if you have some words for us today.
Yeah, thank you, Danny, and everybody. So we are. I wanted to take this on because I've been seeing it myself before when I was a community organizer, and I was with the Southwest Environmental Justice Group. And then I live in McKinley Park too, born and raised in Pilsen. So been seeing how much of the truck issues and that come into our community completely just pour their toxins into our neighborhoods. They drive in areas, in residential areas, even when there's signs that says you're not even supposed to go in there. We're very reckless. And our community keeps breathing these toxins and for years and decades. I actually, once upon a time when I was even younger, helped close I was part of the young folks that were closing down the plant and the coal plant in Pilsen, across the street from Benito Juarez. So this is something that has always been something that I've when I was younger, thrived to do, and now that as a state senator, I want to continue to do everything we can to be able to bring the right remedies to our communities, because it's not fair. The 1st and the district is one of the biggest environmental justice areas in the state. All down I-55, you see a bunch of manufacturing companies. But then you see a lot of asphalt companies. Like, unfortunately, we deal with Mad Asphalt that has a lot of these nasty trucks that come in and out of our neighborhood into McKinley Park. With they continue to do whatever they want. So we're doing our best right now as well to move this bill in the Senate as well. And I'm doing everything I can right now to try to wiggle it out so that we could try to get a hearing and try to get it on the floor. Unfortunately, we're already having the opponents, already, coming at us and talking about their issues and, whatever. And, I'm someone that's going to work with everybody. But at the end of the day, though, we can't move away from the reason why we're here. And the reason why we're here is to make sure that we bring the right remedies and solutions to environmental justice zones, because our families deserve to breathe clean air. And there's so many cases of asthma, and I was born with a cleft lip because my mother used to breathe all these toxins in the Southwest side. So I've actually had my own personal issues because of all the toxins in the air. So just wanted to say I'm here to do everything I can in my power to try to make this work. And again, thank you all for your time, and let's continue to work. We got about another month, about 5 weeks or so to try to get this moving. But just know that you have my full commitment to get this done.
Really appreciate your leadership in the Senator, and we look forward to working on this with you in the next few weeks. With us to highlight a little bit more about why this is important is Jose Acosta Cordova, who's a Transportation Justice Program Manager with the Little Village Environmental Justice Organization, and has a lot of great experience in developing analysis on this front. So, Jose.
Thank you, Danny. And thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. Today really marks an important day for the work that we are collectively doing in advocating for reform of the freight sector. And just to highlight what we're dealing with globally as well as locally, right? We built a system of moving goods around the world that prioritizes infrastructure, efficiency, speed, and geography. It is a system that has roots in colonialism and imperialism, and is primarily focused on moving raw materials to centers of production, and then from there, moving manufactured goods to centers of consumption. This system includes container ports, marine vessels, railroads, airplanes, trucks, all of which are used to ship goods from country to country. And their final destination before they get to the consumer is warehouses or distribution centers. These warehouses, these are where the goods are stored before they are transferred to retailers and ultimately to consumers. So I say all of this to say that we understand that freight is a critical part of our economy and that we rely on it for all of our basic stuff. The problem is that this system has many negative externalities that primarily impact low-income communities and most notably communities of color, as has been highlighted. This statement is true across the world. From the global south to the south and west sides of Chicago, our communities are sacrificed so that wealthier populations can have access to whatever goods they desire, so that impatient shoppers can get their product delivered overnight, or sometimes even as quickly as on the same day. As the report points out, the warehousing boom that we've seen in Chicago over the last 15 years has been spurred by the growth of e-commerce and last mile delivery. Companies want to be close to population centers so that they can ship goods to consumers rapidly. And through our advocacy work, we've been highlighting these issues on this point for many years, and it's often falling on deaf ears. In Chicago, as was pointed out, we are the freight hub of North America with more rail infrastructure than any other city on the continent. We have 19 intermodal rail yards, which have been recently defined by the EPA as inland or dry ports, and were defined as such due to the national advocacy that we have done through the Moving Forward Network, are spread throughout the entire region, with 8 in the city and 11 in the suburbs. These 19 ports combined move more than 16.5 million containers in 2022. This would make Chicago the second busiest port city in the U.S. and the 11th busiest port city in the world. So just for context, Chicago moved more containers than the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, which is the busiest port in Europe. I'm giving this context to help you all understand how all of this is connected. The vast majority of these rail yards are located in Black and brown communities, and especially in the city, where all 8 are in the south and west sides. Surrounding the rail yards are the largest industrial corridors, and within those industrial corridors are where these warehouses are overwhelmingly concentrated. So all day, every day, diesel-powered trucks transport containers from the rail yards to the warehouses and from the warehouses to the retailers, using local roads and interstate highways to do so. They travel through residential areas, pass by schools, parks, hospitals, commercial areas every day. Where we live, where we learn, where we play, where we shop, we are inundated with truck traffic. As was mentioned, this report highlights that at least 525,000 truck trips service those 2,400 leased warehouses every single day. This means on an average year, there are approximately 192 million truck trips happening throughout the state. And this is just from warehousing. This doesn't include the long-haul trucks that are passing through the state or the other tens of thousands of diesel-powered vehicles that operate in the state every day. It is no surprise then that transportation is the leading source of greenhouse gas emissions in the state. A recent report by the Respiratory Health Association, Dirty Dozen report, highlighted how 12 counties in the state, including every county in Northeast Illinois, is within the top 9% of the worst air pollution in the country. Cook and DuPage in particular are in the top 1%, meaning if you live in one of these counties, you're breathing some of the worst air quality every day. From the rail yards to the warehouses to the trucks, there are all the main sources of this pollution. El Vejo, along with our partners in the Chicago Environmental Justice Network, as well as allies across the city, have been advocating for him for years. Have advocated to the mayor's office, to the city departments like planning and development, public health, transportation, to our local and state politicians, to the governor's office, and still there has not been enough action. Warehouses continue to be developed in our communities, and we continue to be sacrifice zones so that wealthier parts of the city can have their goods delivered. In developing these warehouses, proximity to vulnerable populations is never considered. This was evidence in our fight to stop Hilco from developing a 1.3 million square foot warehouse that has been since been leased by Target. In a neighborhood, little village that was already overburdened by the developers forced. This is evidence when the Southeast Side communities try to stop North Point development from developing 2.4 million square feet of warehouses called Commerce Park Chicago. The city and developers forced it through. Why was an Amazon warehouse allowed to be constructed within 1,500 feet of 5 schools on 51st Street in Gage Park? Why is a warehouse currently being planned near the intersection of Pulaski and Cermak? These are just a few of thousands of examples where our communities have been sacrificed, where our lives did not matter, and where it was more important to build a warehouse that would bring low-wage and unstable jobs than it was to have the right to clean air. At what point do we have too many warehouses? This report highlights not only the disproportionate burden that warehouses have on people of color, but also highlights the need for reform. We need land use reform. We can't keep using outdated and historically racist practices like zoning to concentrate industrial activity. The warehouses and other truck-intensive facilities bring trucks daily into our communities, not only bringing pollution, but also congestion, traffic safety concerns, pedestrians, for drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. El Vejo, along with the Center for Neighborhood Technology, recently published a truck traffic data portal website that highlighted 35 of the busiest locations across the city for truck traffic and saw that over a 24-hour period, some intersections had more than 5,000 truck trips pass through. The reform also includes the way that we regulate warehouses, as was highlighted on the info around the Warehouse Pollution Act. This will bring more transparency and accountability on warehouses. And one of the most critical aspects is the need to get zero-emission vehicles on the road and the need to get diesel-powered vehicles off the road. The air pollution that are spewing is literally killing our communities. This warehouse pollution bill needs to be passed, and we also need the complementary bills that were mentioned, the Advanced Clean Trucks Rule and the Heavy-Duty Omnibus Rule. Combined, these rules will help increase accountability, but most importantly, reduce air pollution in our communities. This is what we want the most. We just want to breathe. Clean air is a human right, and they don't have the right to poison ours. So just this morning, the Biden administration announced the release of a new fact sheet and set a first ever national goal of a zero emissions freight sector and announced nearly $1.5 billion to support transition to zero emission heavy duty vehicles. This is huge, and it is due to the advocacy of frontline and fence line communities across the country. Through MFN, we fought for reform, and we are finally starting to see change. Locally, we need to see the same change happen. From the state to the local level, our political and civic leaders need to prioritize our communities and stop sacrificing our health in the name of economic development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. That was very inspiring, and we definitely need a lot more action to happen. And to speak a little bit more on that and the lived experiences of people who live on those frontline communities impacted by diesel pollution, we have Alfredo Romo, Executive Director of Neighbors for Environmental Justice.
Thank you so much, Danny, for the introduction, and also very appreciative of the environmental presence here in the space. My name is Alfredo Romo. I am the Executive Director of Neighbors for Environmental Justice. M4EJ is a community group of organizers that believes in grassroots change from the bottom up. Our work is centered upon the belief that when low income and people of color understand the root causes of their experiences of oppression, they have the power and agency to transform society. Our mission is to educate, advocate, and organize with our community to accomplish environmental justice on the southwest side of Chicago. We started because Mad Asphalt opened up across the street from our beautiful park in close proximity to schools and homes. The smoke from the stacks also came with 12-ton trucks and diesel fumes. The trucks wear down the roads, until more trucks bring more asphalt and the cycle continues. And every day they are joined by more trucks coming and going from Amazon warehouses and Target distribution centers. Based on our environmental work and advocacy efforts with our allies, here is what we know. We know vehicles are the #1 source of carbon emissions in Illinois. We know warehouses are both source and destination for vast numbers of trucks and cars and delivery vans. We know we cannot reduce what we do not measure. Here is what we do not know. Where are the warehouses of Illinois? What counts as a warehouse? When will the next one open down the street? How many trucks will it put on the road? How much pollution will it add to the air? Warehouses are distribution centers for air pollution. If a factory puts pollution in the air from a building, the state requires a permit. But if a warehouse ships it out on trucks and spreads it through our communities, if they drop it off side our schools and put it in our parks, no permit is required. No data is collected. No harm is acknowledged. The state pretends harm isn't happening if we close our eyes. But even if our eyes are closed, we can still smell the diesel and feel the rumbling. It is time for Illinois to map the warehouses and count the trucks. We must reduce pollution, so we must measure it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Alfredo. And to close us out today, I'm going to bring back Nada Delamy, Vehicle Electrification Manager with the Environmental Defense Fund, to talk a little bit more about how we can take action.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. So you've heard a lot today about how tremendous an issue diesel pollution is for neighbors and workers around warehouses, how disproportionately the health, economic, and environmental impacts are concentrated in communities of color. I know we've been talking in the chat about how big an impact it is and people want to help. Thanks so much to the frontline communities, advocates, and legislators sharing their experiences and how urgent it is. We have a couple of letters that we want to share. There's an organizational sign-on letter link, as well as if you're an individual interested in signing a petition supporting legislation, a link as well. So I just wanted to share that with the attendees of this call. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here, and to our speakers, legislators, for helping lead this education, advocacy on the Illinois Warehouse Bloom. The report is now live and will be available on Environmental Defense Fund's website, edf.org. At this time, we will now pause and turn it over to questions. I do see one in the chat from Nick Bloomberg from WTTW and Chicago PBS. I know the House version of the bill has had several hearings this session. What are expected next steps? Do we anticipate having support from leadership in both chambers and fellow lawmakers to get this measure passed? Let's see if our legislative friends would want to take a crack at that.
This is Danny. This is Rep. Avalar.
Thank you.
I could take that question. So we are actually talking to multiple colleagues, particularly in the House. We are scheduled for a subject matter hearing, and that was going to be one of the things that I wanted to mention before we close, that we are expecting a subject matter hearing in the early May to talk about this bill and to continue to build momentum.
Is Senator Saventa still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't know, you want to talk about the fact that it's a shell bill. That's a good thing that the president has allowed for you to move this bill on, maybe?
Yeah, sorry. So we do have a shell bill, but we do have a shell bill going, but we do have a lot of, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bunch of text messages. I apologize. I do have a shell bill right now, and I'm getting a lot of the opponents right now. So I'm trying to put some meetings together to try to get their concerns. And I'm so sorry. I'm trying to get their concerns addressed. We do have IMA that's been already contacted me. The Chicago Land Chamber of Commerce has contacted me about it. So I'm trying to set up a meeting with all the stakeholders to try to start going through this so that I could get the bill over to me now. So, but I did file the amendment to shell bill. Yes.
we really thank Senator Cervantes for filing the amendment. So that particular amendment is to bring the Warehouse Pollution Insights Act to the Senate, which will help create the tracking mechanisms for warehousing here in Illinois with the IEPA. Representative Avalar's bill goes a little bit beyond that and helps bring air monitors into those facilities. So combined with both of these, we will be able to have some of that. So we're hopeful that we can advance this in the next coming weeks. I think another question that I'm seeing in the chat is, how open are county assessor databases in Illinois? It may be possible to create an open source data set. Not sure if you want to take that.
Oh, yeah, sure. I was just, I think Sam might be more equipped as an expert to talk about this, but just that the public property like ownership databases might not actually elucidate that much information about who is running the actual logistics companies and any other the information that communities want to know about who they're contracting out to, or how many truck trips and the actual emissions that we're trying to shed any light and transparency onto, so that while that information like could be out there, often we had out to do any action or off of that data.
Yeah, quickly that we haven't had luck working with county officials to get lists of warehouses, both those that are leased and those that are owned or operated in other ways. And so that's why we're calling on this state to require warehouses register.
Can I add some context to that a little bit? So when I was on the Will County Board, we don't keep track of these things, especially if it's already industrial zoning area and a warehouse wants to come in, they can come in by permissible right to build there. So that's, I think, part of the issue is that there isn't a level of government that's tracking unless that entity needed a change of zoning or annexation or some special use permit. Then they would come before a government entity to go through some of that process. Obviously, with the building permits, that would be the easiest way to track any of this. I will say, though, that Will County did a study back in 2017, the Friendly Mobility Freight Study. It is a little outdated, especially after COVID has increased some of the online sales and therefore logistics moving around our country. But I think that has a lot of, when we do studies like that really look at that, it helps. More recently, there was the Moving Forward study, which was a transportation study, especially off of the logistics around I-80 and I-55. And then now there's a new study that the county is doing that focuses not just on truck traffic or car traffic, but all of the ways we move around, including bikes and trails. So I think looking at some of those studies and the data that's coming out of it can really paint a good picture of what's been happening over the years, at least in the 43rd district. But I think that there are other areas who have seen this, especially ones who are looking to bring in intermodal. There's a lot of data that is brought forth beforehand, and they estimate the number of trucks that might be brought in. So I think tracking some of that is just as important as tracking some of the air quality for Illinois.
So much for that insight, Senator. Next question I have here asks, are there any measures in the bill that will address staffing companies and compel them to provide benefits for workers given their health exposure? Sam, do you feel comfortable taking that?
There are not currently measures in the Warehouse Pollution Insights Act that would require companies to address the lack of wages and zero benefits that they often provide their workers. That is something that we have been discussing in future legislative efforts. It was something that we at the time didn't think was possible to include in this particular piece of legislation, we believe that by having more transparency around warehouse locations and the amount of pollution that is generated by them, we can make a better case for ensuring that these warehouse operators sufficiently compensate their workers, including.
Thank you so much, Sam. Next question we have are, what are some potential challenges or barriers to implementing the Warehouse Pollution Insights Act, and how can stakeholders work together to overcome them? Lucy, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is the opposition that is out there from trucking industry and stakeholders who are concerned about what having additional layers of tracking means to them. So I think we're facing some opposition with them in making sure that we are having our legislators have the additional support. So one of the biggest things that we can ask for is making sure that you all take time to call your legislator and talk to your friends and help educate them on this important bill, so they can also talk to their state reps and state senators and get additional support for Senator Ventura, Representative Avalar, and Senator Cervantes.
Danny, just wanted to double up on that. And yes, please contact your elected official, contact our colleagues and let them know why this is important to you. I think it's very, very important that folks hear from their constituents why this is such an important issue, and how it's only fair that you, your family, and our communities have good breathable air. Just wanted to double up on, please definitely contact your local elected.
Perfect. I have a question here on why are warehouses permitted to locate in or adjacent to populated areas in the first place, given how they could be located almost anywhere? Would not make more sense to keep them far away from where people live to help minimize pollution exposure? Sam, would you mind speaking up a little bit about that?
Sure, thanks, Danny. Great question, David. There's no attention that is currently paid to cumulative burden when permitting warehouses. And so that means that moving forward, we really do need to be thinking about how we can center cumulative burden when warehouses are being permitted. This is something that we want to push for in future bills, and it's something we think we'll be able to better push for when we know where exactly these warehouses are located.
I could also add to that. A key reason is also economics. When a couple decades ago, when the warehousing boom first started, it was actually heavily concentrated initially in suburban areas, and as e-commerce and last mile delivery has become so much more important for this network, areas that are located closer to the city or closer to population centers have become that much more crucial. So that's why we've seen, areas along the I-55 between the city and Joliet, be heavily concentrated with warehouse development. So it really comes down to getting the goods to the consumers really quickly, and to be closer to the population centers. It just makes more sense for the companies themselves. And also, like I mentioned, they want to be close to the rail yards, the intermodals, or if we're talking about a city on a coast, close to the container ports, also to highways, right? So for these companies, it's all about moving goods efficiently and quickly. So that's why they locate where they locate.
I also see Representative Avalar with additional comments.
Yeah, actually, Jose just answered the question perfectly. I can tell you that from our area, I moved to the area back in the early 2000s, and many of the people who moved to this area would tell you that there were a lot of cornfields, right? Romeoville, Bolingbrook. We just, we were part of that growing boom of not just warehousing, but just development. So, I think that this just speaks to, the importance of doing better planning when it comes to the future growth, because where you see jobs, that's where you probably also see people wanting to build and create community. So no, I just wanted to add to Jose's answer, just to add my perspective as well, because we were one of those families, right, who also moved to the area because of job opportunities.
Well, actually, if I could add one more thing to that, because I think Representative Avelado made a crucial point. This is also about labor access, right? And these warehouses are dependent on low wage labor, the kind of labor that Zhenya mentioned earlier as well. So there's been that relationship between where, like you said, where people of color, particular Latino, Black, and immigrant folks have moved to, and where these warehouses have developed. There's actually a really great book that I want to recommend to folks called Inland Shift. Race and capital, race capital, something in Southern California by Juan de Lara, where he highlights the way that the Inland Empire, for example, grew around warehousing and primarily around access to labor. So this is the same thing that we see here in Chicago. I'm actually writing my PhD about it, so be on the lookout for that when it comes out. My dissertation about it. But I think this is a really key part of it too, is like these warehouses are sustained on low wage labor. So that's also why they locate where they locate.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you again for joining us today. To speakers, once for being leaders in this, and it's going to take all of us to move this forward. So once again, make sure to contact your legislators, gain support for this bill. It is Illinois Warehouse Pollution Insights Act, and that is SB 838. The links have been dropped in the chat, and we hope we can get a few of you to come down to Climate Lobby Day on May 9th to join us and talk to additional legislators down in Springfield and talk why we need better transportation policies and better air quality policies for our state. So thank you all for your time, and hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon.